Well, dear friends, here we are, once again. It seemed to have gone by especially quickly this year, but then I realized I wasn't here for half of it. So, no, my part went by very, very fast. Maybe this cold spring made it seem a little early no matter what. But we have lots of festivities over the next 2 days. I'll say kind of at the outset, speaking for me, and I'm sure Deb and Barbara, and I'm sure for the whole faculty, how much we appreciate how privileged we feel to have you all come here and work in our program and produce the work you produce, and to have it remain a part of us forever. So we have our 5 poets, and there are copies of the poster here for any friends and family. I'm not sure if Raf's family is going to be the first to grab this, but I think as otters go, very cute little otters. They're here. They're always fun. They're always in the best of spirit, as everyone knows. So. Thank you for coming. Tomorrow at 5, we'll be in the same room with the fiction writers, and then we will reconvene at 7 in the Colonnade Club for the annual Creative Writing Ball. So, the poets are going to read in alphabetical order, and those who are introducing them presumably understand the alphabet as well, and we'll start. So, thank you very much. You'd have to mess with it.
Okay. Is that loud enough? No.
Probably not on.
Is it on?
No, it's not. Okay.
So is that loud enough? No, not really.
Yes, it's on a little bit.
Yeah. Up? Oh, okay. So I'm glad Brianna is here now. The first poem I ever read of Brianna's took place in and around a lake. The last couple of poems I read of Brianna's have also taken place in and around lakes. I still haven't gotten enough of Brianna's lakes. I still haven't gotten enough of Brianna's poems of mythical creatures revived to inhabit the world we inhabit. I still haven't gotten enough of any of Brianna's wild, incantatory poems of landscape. They are poems that are unnerving, serene, visceral, and rambunctious all at once. They're an extension of Brianna, a person who eagerly and actively inhabits the world around her. Anyone who has seen an object made by Brianna, or been to Brianna and Patrick's home, will know how inventive her relationship to natural objects is. She makes tiny matchboxes decorated with Minnesotan grasses. She makes books with bark and stems and maple whirligig mobiles. After I was returning from being away last fall, she made me a rock sheep. He's made of wool wrapped around a rock. Very adorable and surprisingly heavy. This is all very relevant because I think this tactile relationship with the world is part of the strength of her poetry. Many poets go out and admire the woods. Brianna goes out and forages in them. In my relationship with her, I've witnessed that same naturalist's inquisitiveness and care. Brianna is a force of kindness. She asks keenly thoughtful questions. She listens carefully and with open curiosity. Brianna, I hope returning to your place of lakes and northern hardwood forests that you have been longing for brings you many, many more beautiful poems. I and all of us will miss you so much next year. So, Brianna Clavin. Thanks, Becca. That was amazing. How are we on sound? Good? So thank you so much, all of you, for coming. I know I speak for all of us in the graduating poetry year when I say that it means so much to have you here. So many of you have truly affected our lives and profoundly changed us and led us to be the poets that we are. And we're so happy that you came out to hear us do our final reading. Okay, so sadly these don't have like a thematic arc, but I think that would be okay. This first poem I'm going to read is called Layover. Between flights, Bangkok's glass airport stretching corridors into golden void. When we woke, the disorienting. I don't remember, but would you mind sharing that coffee? We already spoke about leaving India and Myanmar to start our lives back up, which felt forged. The voice of God announced time yet to see the grand Thai metropolis. I said, I'm glad I left my camera in the ocean. That photography, burned eyes, vertebrae clambering up the back, inner rungs of the body bent out, the longing to slip nectarines in their mouths. One clean hut waits in a groundnut field. Belief is startling in the way that you can throw it on or off according to the weather. When the rain streaks over you, blurring you into landscape, and it satisfies, and your spirit beads up on your skin. All hues seep. Tint of the temple built like a spider, tint of the old man playing carriage horse all his life. He said,
Food like gasoline that some engine converts to living on, I said. God, someone kept saying, God, God. Her legs sewn with crimson thread, blur my prayer, blur ever over my. Boys flay durian meat for market, and there are cups of ground sugar cane at lunch, heaps of sweet mulch. The voice of God was saying responsibility toward the earth and humankind, but we had Thanaka paste on our cheeks, malachite on our necks. Remember the hut in the groundnut field? There was a banyan tree nearby, and one white sagu, and a child's shirt drying from the thatch. Remember the men reading newspapers by rain light? Remember students sitting on white, wet tile? Remember the tea woman stringing jasmine on your neck? Zara, remember bowing your head to receive it? Okay. The introduction, Becca briefly mentioned my love for my home geography of Minnesota, and so I've written about it a lot, probably too much, but I'm going to read two of those poems to you guys today. And the first one is called Boreal, with leech in parentheses. Was a fern unfurling in the bright green water, dreaming dark mermaids and cold, quick teeth. In the company of little moose drowned in the muskegs, leeches and their secret craft of young, two slender strings, slow twirling hungers, layers under light. At the birch and evergreen clearing, where as a child I built a table from decay-deep branches and slept. I still come in the evening, though I've since learned fear of black bears, hatred of horseflies, to lie on my stomach and suck water from the moss. There are great blue herons long dead in the deep. There are ashes from the family, salting it down. Thirsts, I take them up in my mouth. I swallow. Okay. And this one is also called Boreal, but it has tick in parentheses. Really write about the beautiful northern creatures. I begin with the sun, how it's melting through the pan-flat sky, a spreading oil in the lake. You stop me there for dinner, the smell of walleye hissing, circles of meat from the cheeks frying up gold till fork after fork. We go for an evening dip, shampoo our hair, drink the magnet-colored water for luck, to hold a bit of the dark while it swims over Canada. There's no narcotic, no coffee to keep awake, no liquor, but the lake, the lake. Our pupils all widening black seed, ants at the picnic crawling in and out of me. Ticks are the cost of love in tall weeds. I pay it, exactly. Build the fire from hair and sticks. Let it float the woods over, comb tangles from the spruce. Let rust cover the canoe we pushed through dark aisles of water lily, how he would tip the water up, kiss the cold blush. I lay quiet as a sky. Fire snaps at sap on this great rock, gilden and lichen, with night gilding you and I. And this is a brand new one, so mainly for the poets who've heard everything over and over again at this point. But this is called Cracks in Lake Superior. There, ships vanish. The temperature of water swelling from winter's throat. I waited while ice buckled up in fringes of gray teeth. Alone that night, I stuffed my sorrow like bread back into my mouth. I slid foot by foot up to my knees in snow, but under each footprint, ice gleamed black in factory light. Dark meters beneath me, northern pike lurked off the edge of a rock shelf, watching dead water. The lake shifted with gunshots. The wind built wolves up from snow, sent them howling into town. Duluth, draw thy deadbolts. We are all going roller coaster down when lakes crack like plates on the floor. I bit silver from the sky, found it true. Said, mined for metal, with the pickaxe of winter struck fast in my brain. I'm going to read 3 more poems to you guys. And one of the things I've been working on this semester are a bunch of poems that sort of involve Gretel, the fairy tale character. And I don't know why I really started writing about her. I'm sure there's some psychological connection I should look into. But it's kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, but these are all 3 Gretel poems. And we'll start in winter and move to summer, so we leave on a happy note. All right. Gretel in the snow. First, it's marshmallows. Oh, baby, it's cold outside, and warm hands of the lover on your spine. Well, any fool could see the trees turning to spindle point. Yes, every home is growing teeth, but there's the lover again, freckles in auspicious constellation across his shoulders. A gift from his mother, like the darker gift your mother tried to keep from you. The winters with her babies safe at home while she drove, what came to shape in the headlight snow, how she toyed with letting the steering wheel go. Now the lover is drawing the poison out with his mouth. Now the stars on his body map a path back home. Now, Gretel, there are crumbs on the floor. Are you still a child so starved for Kexa she crumples more than she consumes? Have you spent your night in the drifts dreaming frosting? Is your brain frostbitten to bits? Voice horsed to nothing in the ergosphere? Voice licked to salt on the road? And this one is called Gretel at the Frog Pond. In the thickness am I, hair like dead cattail stalks, though I tried to tend myself, though evenings find me with tangles torn out, licorice-limbed, shiny as a cranberry. Frog, I might have learned my lesson with candy, houses that hunger for the hungry, yet now there's nightly cocktail parties, languages we speak and have sickened on. And all the old places are sick of me, Frog. I need a stronger drink. Spike it some chlorophyta algae. I brought my own glass, thanks. I'll likely want another. But first, tell me what it's like to smell storms as men smell bread. Thunder crust rising and browning, salt flash of lightning. This must be heaven to you, Frog. Your skin is luminescent. How about something illegal? Did you hear fines for harvesting water lily are up 100? It's this damned economy, this drought of green honey. That's one reason I come here, Frog. You don't charge a poor girl anything. You don't know how attractive generosity is as a quality. So many people seem to offer a kindness while they're firing up their ovens, but forgive me, that was fishing. For sympathy, I don't need to fish for. You wouldn't do this if you didn't, on some level, love. Not that I'm putting words in your mouth, Frog, only that this storm is whipping the clouds to cream, and near you, I believe in reams and reams of rain. Okay, and this poem is kind of confusing, but it's really fun to read out loud. So that's why I'm going to end on it. I sort of was thinking about this time that I worked at a raspberry farm over the summer, and so there's a lot about raspberries now that I'm writing about in my poems because they're really interesting plants and delicious, of course. But anyway, so this is called Gretel Takes a Job at Canby Raspberry Farm. Oh, and I should say Canby raspberries are a type of raspberry, so it's like C-A-N-B-Y. There's a little pun in here about that, but they're just like a kind version. Bruise from rain balm and rain for the bruise. Bathe me, Sherwood, bright back. Green bath for the jays, bumblebees under hay, hay home and honeycomb watered down. Sugar mud for proboscis, for a world that needs some sweetening. Dirt worth and rich earth and an Earl Grey morning. Clouds of milk, morning silk down from sky in wet reams. Wheat daydreams a coo from the raspberries, and all they look like Christ with their thorns and blood seeds, till the golden field is purple scars under burnt stars, smelling bread and jam, grounds for going the way of wheat, golden kernel choked down by thorns, raspberry born, can be dangerous for birds picking seeds on the path, can be raspberry words. We took it up from prairie land, honey, flour, butter on the tongue, salty savor of a life well rubbed into the corners of a pan, Minnesota farm hand, prairie brown arm, bake me thunder scones, batter band in a bowl, hot oven hole for cake, keeping safe with my Orchard County friend, her flickering strawberry head, apples she'll bring, green or red, when the rain ends. Thanks, guys.
Well, all is well, but all is too well, turns out.
There's moments when I love my job, and this is one of them. There's an excess of love in the room, and we're also in excess of the fire code for this room because of the wonderful turnout that we have. So either about 20 of us need to leave, which is not acceptable to me, or we can relocate down to the Newcomb Hall Theater and continue the reading there. And so, in an orderly manner.
No panic, no panics. Just take your belongings. Follow. Who's going to lead us down there to the theater?
It's the theater is on the lowest level. It's pretty much directly under this room, but you sort of have to walk to the other end of the building, go down the steps to the lowest level. I apologize for this.
I will bring Barbara's flowers here, so we will know that this is the conch. Where the flowers go, so goes the poem. Follow the gift. Fred is getting all of this.
Aviva was once.
I mean, you're the one that's been off in Venice for like weeks or something.
Yeah, we were gone. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. Did you apply to be a manager? Yeah. Oh. Oh, yeah. Okay, I have to get this.
Jennifer and another they're all waiting nervous by the mic and then we're looking all to the
Well, it's probably a good thing we booked for, tomorrow for the fiction reader. We'll clearly fill this place. So, I had no idea. Anyway, I'll move the flowers, but the flowers have always been part of this. We over the 15 years I've been here, I've been searching for the perfect place to do these wonderful events. We've never searched in the middle before. But the flowers have always told us that they're there. So, thank you all. Thanks to the Newcomb folks for sort of messing up something that was nice, but then so quickly getting us back on track. I really do mean the latter part of that sincerely. So, where were we? The poets have to get the alphabet. It's hard enough for them to get the alphabet. Oh, okay.
So I feel like that exercise was really appropriate given who I'm about to introduce. So my name is Teresa Kim and I'm introducing Shay Honda. Depending on my own depth of perception on a given day, Shay appears to be either a very simple or a very mysteriously complex guy. His mode of dress appears simple. T-shirt and blue jeans with a black backpack from whence dangle a pair of aesthetically soiled tennis shoes. He wears some variation of this to class. He wears this on trips to and from the gym, which is to say always. And he wears this to the MFA's end-of-year fancy schmancy holiday party, which he attended as it was on his way home from the gym. Food is also a high priority for this guy of apparently simple concerns. You hear him critique the foods he's tried. Sometimes he reacts with a varying pitch. And usually the higher the pitch, the more undecided he is. But his verbally articulated reactions are usually one of two. Oh, so good! Or, oh, why? Or sometimes even, why? Why? You make such observations about Shay, and it's easy to think, simple guy. But then if you really think about it, think about it. And suddenly simple just doesn't cut it. What other heartfelt reaction is there then? So good, and why? What's worth chronicling besides dumbstruck joy and utter condemnation? Praise of the ineffable and existential questioning. Why? Suddenly, the simplicity seems like a result that's been cultivated, whittled down to only the most basic necessities. And certainly, this is an aesthetic I appreciate in Shay's work, which, on the surface, feels deceptively simple. The vocabulary is rarely ornate, the images are clearly drawn, the music is staid, the voice is straightforward. But for all of its unassuming staidness, Shay's tight lines move us through a poem the way a body is moved to action by muscles vigorously hewn. I could have said chiseled and didn't. Vigilant against undeserved sentiment or easy music, his poems ask you to do the work of going to that place where you can hear a quieter register. The work of seeing past the polished surface, a deceptively simple exterior, and investigate the careful craft of their maker. As Van Gogh once said, how difficult it is to be simple. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Shay Haza.
You crushed that as a righteous introduction. I was afraid you'd make me sound like someone I was not. So. Thank you very much for that. We're good on sound and everything. All right. It's been a while since I've read my poems, so it's nice to be here. It's nice to see some familiar faces in the audience. It's nice to have my family here, definitely. I brought a handful of poems. I'm going to read about 6. And we're going to start with a poem that has to do with love and romance and all that fantastic stuff that poets have been writing about forever and will continue to write about forever. So this is called, I keep my face up right here so that the sound's not just in and out. This is called Sunset. Slow clovers swoop the coast, the sun's a globe of runny yolk. In moments it will set, smear its call and gilded mess over all the firmament. Drip, drip. Isn't this romantic? Yes. We go to bed. What is romance, anyway? The next day, I woke before 8 and watched you sleep. It was boring. So I grew up playing a ton of sports. I was involved in athletics since I was really young. I played baseball, football, tennis, volleyball. And it seems strange to say this, but when you're young, it seems like some of the highest highs and the lowest lows that you experience as a kid when you think of yourself as an athlete has to do with sports. how did I play the game? Did we win? So when I started writing poetry, I had all that stuff to kind of like draw on. So it was, I guess, it was a surprise to me to kind of like see that early on a lot of the stuff I was preoccupied with and that I wanted to get down, involved in some way. Athletics, so this is a poem kind of having to do with some of that. Small bodies need something to believe in. The end zone has a dwelling, their own invincibility. Before games, I remember the boy whose collarbone I shattered, the crushed husk of his body and grass, and how sated I felt afterward, standing over him. I'm familiar with the consequences of remorse. In this sport, it's the penitent that suffer. So when I see these boys, swollen and angry, lurch in unison like righteous bullies across the turf, I feel nothing but my own bloodthirstiness against their bodies. What does it mean that later we meet at midfield and I smack every one of their outstretched, dilapidated hands? It means we age, inflicting pain. It means we expect to be forgiven. So growing up, I lived in a very lush community with a lot of nature, and oftentimes during the weekend I'd go and kind of run around in the woods. And I remember one time there's a golf course, and in the middle of the golf course there's this really massive wooded area with a river running through a small stream. And I remember stumbling upon this tree swing dangling from one of the massive sycamore trees, and it was just a rope. And I remember spending, literally hours that day until nightfall, just swinging back and forth. And this poem has to do with that. It also involves my brother and being young and going out and doing weird stuff, and then growing older, and then kind of getting a little bit more distant. It's called Tree Swing. In the ochre light, I see it dangling from the branch tip of that braided sycamore. Silver creek and crisp imbricate leaves beneath our feet. I see my brother suspended in the parched summer stillness, his left foot fixed in the loop at the droop end of the rope. I walk alongside him and use my fingers softly into his teetering heft, as if to steady the pitching stern of a dinghy over dark water. He smells of camphor and the grooved pastel soaps in the guest bathroom of our parents' home. I notice my job to push him, this small boy who sleeps nights in the room next to mine, his breath through the wall, the moored rumble of boats, their motors turning over in the darkness, widening the distance between us. I gather him up, the whole grinning pendulum of 7 years. I gather his weight, his girth, the great hull of it in my arms, and let go. When I see him diminish as my palms empty in his wake, I understand what it is to send someone willingly away, all speck and jetsam, and watch him return what seems like years later, both of us staring again at each other as if across a great sea. This is another poem about... Alright, I guess I'm concerned a lot in my work and just in my daily life about relationships and connections and how people kind of come together and how that's either built upon or at times it crumbles and kind of the celebration of that. And so this poem has to do, again, I don't know, with kind of love, but more so the falling apart of things. It's called Recurrence. The winter of '07, only once, I drove all the way north on Highway 1 to Mendocino to bring you home. Halfway there, in a turnout off the coast, I stood in the wind at the edge of a cliff and watched the sea between ships diminish with distance. I remember how even near the end, we walked at night along the beach to the harbor to watch the boats come in, and how seeing them, their elegance, their great size returning, was a gift. In the afternoon, when I arrived and couldn't reach you, I drove slowly, not thinking, to the harbor, but the boats were gone. Then there was a sound, my phone, and when I answered, a voice, yours, but softer than I remembered, far away. "Shay," it said, "there's no need. I know you're here, I'm sorry. Last night in my dream, I walked again along that beach to the harbor and saw you at the water with your back to me. It was foggy, the boats were gone. Even then I waited and waited but never saw one." I got two more to go. This is so last year I went to a AWP conference in Boston with a few other poets, and it's a good time. Afterwards I came back and I wrote this poem, and I don't necessarily know if it was inspired by Boston or what, maybe it wasn't somewhere. That's a backstory if there was one, It's called Story. She had felt Sunday morning, shutting his door quietly behind her and walking out and breathing in the brilliant winter, the colors of the passing cars in the windows and of the white clouds repeating themselves. That she wasn't embarrassed or saddened exactly by her leaving, or the sense, slightly comic, that she would never see him again. The sex had been good, rougher, more acrobatic than she was used to, and afterward, turning slowly in the bathroom mirror, trembling, a little bewildered by her smell, musky, oddly feral. She noticed that a gust of air from the unlatched window behind her had made the curtains ascend like a new translucent skin above her in the mirror. And for a minute or two, hot water steaming in the sink, she stood that way, stock still, naked, raised curtains, her trembling, and the animal smell, integumental, coming up again as the wind stilled, and the curtains fell. Alright, last one. This is a poem, it's very recent, it's probably the most recent poem I've written. It was very fun to write, so we'll end here. It's called Tell Me Again. Tell me again about your memory of him, how when you stepped off the train, he looked wounded, standing there, his face in his hands. He looked at you, and that's when you knew. You said it happened quickly, but everything fast seems immense to me. Even now, it's the solemnity in your voice that's startling, a faucet dripping. The problem is that nothing lasts. See that Labrador by his lonesome, lying like a furry slug in the sun? I think that's why I started surfing. Nothing worked. I was on a train, and out the window there was the ocean, blue and endless. I didn't have anything to believe in. I couldn't look at anyone I met. Their eyes were so bright. I just stared over their shoulders and saw fields and fields of yellow daffodils. I thought this was normal. Then one morning I saw the figures in the water moving fast as trains, but graceful, uninhibited, and I looked at the waves, and behind them was the world. I didn't see any flowers. I wish I could tell you what it was like the first time, you know, when it's night, and there's a little light from the moon, and the girl you're with leans closer to you for the cold and tugs at your sleeve and says, "Oh, look at me," when I'm talking. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jack.
Okay. We'll get into it. I'll just, you know what? It's fine. So, one thing that you need to know about the poets is that we all kind of have dreams about each other, and then look forward to sharing them on, like, when workshop comes. I was like, oh man, I had this dream about you. And so I remember that this has happened several times, but I only really remember the one dream that I'm in, which is kind of selfish, but it happened in Lindsay's head. And so once she told me that she had had this dream where I saved a bunch of the MFA poets from a bloodthirsty giant by negotiating a peace treaty. And none of you have thanked me, by the way. Finally, a little recognition.
But, you know, as much as I would like to think that this is, you know, her amazing opinion of me, I suspect that dreams tell us more about the dreamer than anything, right? And so, if anyone is capable of arbitrating a peace treaty with a bloodthirsty giant, it is Lindsay. Both her comments in workshop and her poems themselves act as the voice of reason for giants or insecure poets, and they bring clarity where it is needed most. Her words are purposeful, never thoughtless, and she engages with both the world of our poems and the real world, whatever that is, with the same level of intentionality. Hypothetically, if I were asked to choose a poem to read to an angry giant, I might do well to choose one of Lindsay's. And I suspect that this is true because not only would the giant be convinced by her amazing talent not to crush our bones and bake them into his bread, but her words themselves would make him want to be a better giant. At least, that is what they do for me. I am so happy to introduce Lindsay Hill.
Thanks, Mirabella. Yeah, I guess I have kind of a reputation of having dreams about the other poets. I had one about Brianna too that I put in her introduction last time. I guess. Let's start again. The Lost Book. Deeper than did ever plummet sound, said Prospero, and drowned his book. But you and I laid all ours down like tracks behind us. Years later, circling back, we found their empty shells, the pages torn away by thieves or animals or wind. We didn't care. I shook my head, more pages floated from my hair. You called this beauty and cut them into clothes I never wore, just folded with a secret fear, as if they were made of human skin. There were always more pages. Many nights, my heart in my mouth, I nailed them to your door, pasted them over the glass in your windows. You woke up in joy, crying the words out. Other times, we spoke only in song, falling in love with how quickly our words vanished. Such strange musics crawled up out of us, alien and screeching, then crooning, dove-like, doldrummed. You told me you loved me. I could not answer. The moon fattened, the leaves opened. I could not answer. The trees were naked, the moon darkened and came down. I wrote you many letters saying this, I cannot answer. One night, we tried talking only in jokes. Who's there? We demanded, until we couldn't breathe from laughing, until we slipped between your bed's parted pages, pushed away layers of dead leaves to reveal all that lost paper dissolving like the bright lies we scattered. I took the pulp of it in my hands, looked into your face. Animal, you spat. Thief. Wind. I wake. There is a book spread open over my heart. The pages, gold-edged, seem treacherously thin, but when I turn them, they hold and hold. You lie beside me, sleeping deep, and I know that I must hide it from you, this little book I surely wrote myself. So I wanted to read that one because it has the title of my thesis in it. So I'd start out with that one, Animal, Thief, Wind. And it was the first poem that I wrote when I came to UVA, so I thought it would be appropriate. As many of you know, I spent a couple of weeks living at a Buddhist monastery in upstate New York. Is this too loud? I feel like I'm talking really loud. So I spent about 2 weeks in a Buddhist monastery in upstate New York, and which inspired several poems. And this one is not about me, but it was inspired by that experience. These next couple poems actually were inspired by that experience. The Mountain and the Teaspoon. It has an epigraph. What is your original face? The face you had before your parents were born. Just from a very old Zen text. Don't eat. Don't brush your teeth, your hair. Don't even take a piss. There were no stars. She thought of astronomy class, high school. Neutron matter, the weight of a mountain held in a teaspoon. Paxil, Celexa, Lexapro. She made a choice she could not explain. She cried and the therapists blinked. The sensei said, focus on a point 2 finger widths below the navel. It will become your face. You will smile from it, weep from it. The skin will turn rose when you blush. She wondered what would happen to her actual face. Would it fade away, or would it stay put, like a person you could never get rid of, whom you struggle and struggle to love because, well, how can you stop? You can stop, replied the sensei to the man sitting beside her. Suppose he's my brother, said the man. This means nothing, the sensei said. If you so choose, you can stop. She starts. A leaf catches in her hair. A caterpillar curls in her palm. Inside her, 2 hearts beat. Prosopagnosia, a condition that makes all faces indistinguishable. She imagines walking through a park full of children, not knowing which is hers, but listening for a shout. Zazen, which basically just means sitting meditation. The air outside laced and tore with birds. The blue-gray morning smoothed my eyes. I was so afraid I would move. I sat like a question. In his home up the road, the abbot was dying. I visited him once, and his skin looked like fake skin, prosthetic. It must be so easy for a Buddhist to die, I thought. All those years living like the dead in this world, touching but never holding on. Each morning I sat, alive to the music of my ache, to the little silences in it for drawing breath, and could not draw breath. Let it go, Lindsay, he said. I've forgotten what. The pain body. I was driving 101 East to 95 South in the sleet. I was driving to Wachusett, then Quinnipoxet, then the 2 hills, Laurel and Valley on toward your yard. I was listening to a man on the radio talk about the pain body that grows inside us like a child, and I was thinking of all the things that come from us and through us, that are a part of us but not us wholly, when I arrived. And I touched the doorbell, and you opened the door, and I felt as if someone had slit my breastbone and breathed into it. The air that flowed from inside your house was warm as your sighs in my hair, my ears, those nights when I'd wake at the rise of a terrible wondering. Just as I woke each day in South India, where was I, and how would I ever get back? I was back. Hyderabad to Mumbai, Mumbai to Heathrow, Heathrow to Logan to home. I followed you inside, and we didn't talk about any of it. We slept on your bed like it was 2 separate beds, and in the morning when I climbed back into my car, I sobbed so loudly for so long, as if I were giving birth. So I don't write very many funny or lighthearted poems, but these next ones have I like to think are somewhat more lighthearted in some way. I call them koans. So koan is a type of text in Zen Buddhism, and they're often sort of referred to as Zen riddles, but they don't have a logical answer. They're sort of meant to be meditated with, and it's really more about derailing your sort of traditional trains of thought. So it's defies logic in some way, but has a stronger resonance. So I have a bunch of these little ones. I'm just going to read a few of them for you guys. And they all have, for reasons I'm not really sure why, all have letters attached to them. So this is koan HH, first tier. Fist in my throat, note of water, I hear you from your nook up in Franconia. A drop so large, rock cracked to let you out. How you tadpoled down. How I tilted my head up, thirsty, size of a keyhole, young, knowing nothing. Koan Gigi. This field will vanish us. I want to trust you. The word itself is rusting, grass-taken pieces of a bicycle. I could lose you like that. We could seal every door to the underworld. Why won't you show me? There is no one but the killdeer, nesting beneath wheat. Our love of gold the wind reaps. Look at me. Let your flowers blow wild. Koan B, scared shitless Buddha. What if I find a book on the tracks, a train fast approaching, 51 houses flying in my direction, then the song of 6 whistles, come, kiss the book, come on, swear, your hand to your heart through your mouth, the book lying closed, 2 hands in prayer, pull them apart and press it inside, this arrow that's become a flower. Just a couple more. Morning in Station North. Someone has spoken. A young man's voice answers in irritation. What? I love you, she says. I open my shutters and the old homeless man in the yellow rain boots looks up. Every few weeks he arrives at the abandoned row house beside mine, unlocks what was once his mailbox to an avalanche of advertisements and maybe one white envelope, his name still peeking through its window. I love you, she says again. The young man has crossed the street, perhaps forever. A car horn sounds. Someone passes between them on a bicycle. In the kitchen, cracking eggs on the edge of a bowl, I think of that morning back in Bolton Hill, me in pajamas on the sidewalk, you dressed in yesterday's clothes and saying, I don't believe in any of this, then pedaling away down Dolphin to Howard to Chase to Cathedral. Caught high in the trees, a plastic bag filled and filled, the street glittered with shattered glass. I thought, at last, our sadness is over, but it was a place, built in joy, and the mail kept coming. Last one. As many of you know, I worked at a winery this summer, so this was inspired by some of my experiences there. The Finches. On Saturday at the white hour of 11 a.m., because there aren't any customers yet and we've run out of things to talk about, Caitlin tells me quietly how much she loves the black and yellow finches that visit the sunflowers. She's almost exactly my age, keeps pit bulls, helps her husband lay floors and raise fences, says I'm too trusting. The problem with the North is no one owns guns to protect themselves. I think of the 18-year-old girl at my sister's college who died when a man with a pistol stepped through her open door, pressed the barrel's end to her head, and sent her roommates to the ATM. You have 7 minutes. Later, my sister would tell me the girl had transferred to be closer to her sister, her twin, who is now only half of something. Last night, Caitlin says, hunters shot 4 does on the property, piled the bodies between rows of Merlot and Malbec. She found their fawns this morning, speckled white, blinking in the bright sun, as if they had just been born. We eat lunch in silence, circling our thumbs over the screens of our phones. It's nearly 1 o'clock when the first customers arrive. 2 women, lovers, friends. They sit down, and as I pour the first wine, which is almost as clear as water, the one says to me, let me ask you something. Which would you feel more sorry for? A woman drinking by herself at a winery she used to visit with her now-dead husband, or a dog left alone in a thunderstorm who was so terrified he chewed the baseboards until his teeth broke. They've been arguing about it all day, and they look at me hard, curious to see whose side I'll choose. I want to say all lonelinesses are equal, that loss is loss is loss. A meaningless and paralyzing equation, and I know it's not the truth, or at least not one any of us can live by, or we'd be crying over crushed spiders and the weightless bodies of flies, which, on slow days like this, I sweep from the windowsills. At closing time, as I pump air from the open bottles, Caitlin says, why did they have to kill the moms? She sits and starts counting the cash drawer. People like that give hunters a bad name. On her wrist, the silver bracelet she always wears slides and shines. She told me once that it belonged to her cousin, the one who died at 16. She was like my sister. I stand on the other side of the bar and pour myself a shift drink while she murmurs the numbers under her breath. Looking out the window, I search for the finches, but they're gone. I remember how closely I'd watched them as a child, how their flight patterns made it look like they were sewing something up. Thanks, guys.
Hello, my name is Julia Kerman, and I'm introducing Sophia Sinclair. I was first introduced to the force that is Sophia via another introduction. I had slipped in late, and I was hoping unseen, at a reading late last spring, where Sophia was about to take the stage. I did not know who was supposed to read that night. I didn't know anything about her or her poetry. All I knew was that this was to be my first occasion to observe the poets in the program, their work, and the community I was about to become a part of. Via that introduction, I learned that she was obviously one of the program's rock stars, already with a collection published and out in the world. I learned that Sophia has a warmth and vibrancy about her that people gravitate towards. And as Sophia stepped up to take the mic, I was immediately transported, immersed in her poems, astounded at the caliber of writing from this member of my would-be cohort. And after that night, I told myself, this is where I need to be. Sophia's work is fiercely lyrical. Encountering her poems, one is struck by wave upon wave of description. She draws from the inner and outer landscapes of her homeland of Jamaica, home and family being a powerful source that resonates for both of us. In her work, I find only authentic emotion, raw and unfettered, and unwillingness to conceal things, despite whatever gritty truth may lie behind a poem's creation. For her, that rawness is part of the beauty, the thing that makes a person whole, that makes their lives more meaningful. This is us, she says in one of her poems. This is all of us. And always, too, she speaks with authority of the unparalleled spirit of survival. Survival through various lenses, through race, through womanhood, through humanness. In the event of the last unhappiness, she writes, return to the sea, that cleansing and luminescent agent through which we may be renewed. What we share seems to be an unlikely friendship. Sophia and I, perhaps upon initial observation, could not be more different. Where I cower at a paltry 4'11", Sophia is tall and stately, always elegant. While I tend to tiptoe in running shoes and baggy cardigans, Sophia sails in gracefully, gloriously, always impeccably fashionable. And disparity set aside, Sophia, it is in you that I can safely say that I have found an unexpected home. Home, that place of sisterhood where our conch shell dialects curl tightly on our tongues. Home, a sea that cleanses and renews despite the numerous ramshackle altars we hold vigil at. It's because of this that I am incredibly humbled, touched that you find kinship in our writing to call me one of your sister poets singing from the same family tree. And so, Sophia, I hold my breath, eager for all the things we have yet to see you do, as you go off towards a PhD program, and to generally astound us with all sorts of fabulousness. I think I can safely say that I speak for all of us in the program when I say that it's not only your poems that I will miss, it is you that we will miss most of all. Ladies and gentlemen, Sophia Sinclair.
Thanks, Julia. That was beautiful. You're one of my favorite poets of all time, so it's an honor. Thanks. So I'm going to read 7 poems, and I usually like you all to know what you're in for, so you can count them down. In the event of the last unhappiness, return to the sea. I waited only a decade for the package to arrive. Wrapped in plain brown paper, it came humble as a stone. Vested relic of my seaside home, boxed plain as the last brown loaf feeding flies in the window. My mother, a little girl, hankering for it. I was certain its whole held the cure for all things. For my swollen lip, for my yellow skin, for the wounds I fingered open, for my father's sin, for how badly I wanted to rib to nothing, to be bursting and pregnant with everything. Do not open, was what it said. In the event of the last unhappiness, return to the sea. For years, it brewed a dark hum from its edges, and sometimes I thought it called out to me. I hid it in my abdomen and tried to forget until the body found a way to flay open itself, the way grief yanks its weeds from hallowed brick. My family a hem still unraveling. I awoke to find it hatched like the cleanest egg, polished steel and glass alive in my bed. The machine was small and simple, the way my life is small and simple, only seeming or aching for itself to unmatter, to shatter at the heel of greater things. Okay, so a lot of these poems are a little somber, but I'm actually really happy because my mom is here and I haven't seen her in 2 years. She's told me that I've gotten taller since the last time I was there. So yay. She also managed to smuggle in all the Jamaican food that I asked her for. So I read today with a full heart and a full belly. So this poem, Hands, is for my mother. It's about, she was born with 6 fingers on each hand. And when you try to slice off a 6th finger, life will take its course. It will grow back. But my mother's hands to me hold a rich, deep history and a story. So this is for you, Mom. Hands. Out here, the surf rewrites our silences. This smell of ocean may never leave me. Our humble life, or the sea, a dark page I am trying to turn. Today, my mother's words sound final, and perhaps this is her first true thing. Her hands have not been her hands since she was 12, motherless and shucking whatever the sea could offer, each day orphaned in the tide of her own necessity, where the men-o-war ballooned, wearing her face, her anchor of a heart, reaching, mooring for any blasted thing. Sea roach and black-haired kelp, the jeweled perch or a drop of pearl made with her smallest self. Her night prayers a hushed word of thanks. But out here, the salt depths refuse tragedy. This hand-me-down life burns sufficiently tragic. Here, what was cannibal masters the colonial curse, carved our own language of the macabre, sucking on the thumb of our own disparity. She holds her spliff in the wind and probes squalls, trying to remember the face of her own mother, our island, or some strange word she once found amongst the filth of sailors whose beds she made, whose shoes she shined, whose guns she cleaned, while the white bullet of America ricocheted in her brain. Still, that face she can't recall made her chew her fingernails, scratch the day down to its blood, to the rusty sunset of this wonder, this smashed archipelago, our wild sea grape kingdom overrun, gold and belonging in all its glory to no one. How, being six-fingered, she took her father's fishing line to the deviation and starved of blood what grew savage and unwanted, pulling until they shriveled away, 2 hungry mouths askance and blooming, reminding her that she was still woman, always multiplying, as life's little nubs and dreams came bucking up in her disjointed. How, on the god teeth, she cut this life, offered her hands and vessel to be made wide, made purposeful, her body opalescent with all our clamoring, our bloodline of what once lived and will live and live again. In the sea's voice she hears her answer. Beneath her gravid belly, my gliding hull, a conger eel. Okay, so I made sure that my mom approved all the poems that I was going to read. So this poem is mom approved. It's something that that is interesting for me as a poet is to reclaim words that are used to degrade, especially women, to transform the names of things. So this is Center of the World, mom approved. The meek inherit nothing. God in his tattered coat this morning, a quiet tongue in my ear, begging for alms, cold hands reaching up my skirt. Little lamb, paupered flock, bless my black tea with tears. I have shorn your golden fleece, worn vast spools of white lace, glittering jacquard, gilded fig leaves, jeweled dust on my skin, corn silk hair in my hems. I've milked the stout beast of what you call America and wear your men across my chest like furs. Stick-pin fox and snow blue chinchilla, they too came to nibble at my door, the soft pink tangles I trapped them in. Dear watchers in the shadows, dear thick-thighed fiends, at ease, please. Tell the hounds who undress me with their eyes, I have nothing to hide. I will spread myself wide. Here, a flash of muscle. Here, some blood in the hunt. Now, the center of the world, my incandescent cunt. All hail the dark blooms of amaryllis and the wild pink Damascus, my sweet Aphrodite unfolding in the kink. All hail hot jasmine in the night, thick syrup in your mouth, forked dagger on my tongue, legions at my heel. Here at the world's red Mecca kneel. Here Eden, here Bethlehem, here in the cradle of Thebes, a towering sphinx roams the garden, her wet dawn devouring. Okay, so the next few poems are going to be what are called my America poems. So, one of the interesting things about not being from America is that sometimes I get to experience things for the first time. as an alien, as your government calls me. So this is like an Alien in America poems. Notes on the state of Virginia, 1. Child of the colonies, carrying the swift waves of oceans inside you, the wide dark of centuries, your whole house plunged down, sewn through the needle's eye, the old crows glisten thick in your gullet, eyes beetling through black. You wear your mother's face in the mirror, your mouth closed around all those pills like teeth, each one so heavy your tongue falls numb. Think of your friend who only wanted you to find sleep, whose face asked you not to choose the worst. Dull wretch, slack jaw orphan, you always feel sorry for yourself, and swallow each capsule like the last pearl your grandfather pressed into your palm. How he had dived 3 whole days for it. Your grandfather who loved you but could not say it. All the men who love you and cannot say it. Jamaica, old fur sticking to the roof of my mouth, the one long dream that holds me underwater. Black centipede I still teethe on. Ruined train clattering through my track. Here I could come up for air. Here I could wake with a name I can answer to. Where Thomas Jefferson learned how to belittle a thing, how to own it. He created the word and wanted my mouth to know it. He wanted the whole world pulled through me on a fishing string, where I will find my fingers in the muscle of my throat, where I will marvel at the body asking to live. Okay, this poem's about my redneck neighbors. Plague. The house at the end of my street has been looming all winter, perched forcible through the sour season, pepper lights slinking red gold in its wake, heralding the sign of its own coronation, its million chittering fires, Chevy pickup colony declaring the sidewalk. This, their own white sky, old names they refuse to bury, the whole yard a boisterous spectacle. Alone again this Christmas, I long to set fire to all of it. The glimmering reindeer, fat snowman inflating his visible lung, ghost child ringing his one-horse bell through the night, that bright harassment of Santas. The idea, yes, I made you laugh. Okay. The idea of America burning holes in the lawn. Who could live here with enough mirth to power my city, enough of myself haunting me in some other place? Nonetheless, one matchstick man comes and goes on their horizon, walking hard on his invisible horse, Confederate buckle stroke, kicking toothpick silences. No words ever pass between us as he hoists and pulleys his large flag, daily hanging and freezing through the verbless rubble of these months, determined as an eagle, clawing at its steady rituals. Don't tread on me. Still, I am resolved to come friendly. Built and nested my cowboy greeting, torched it out into this world and watched it choke soundless, die with my good foot caught in their blue hydrangeas, the hawk wife watching. Spies me smiling, waving in their driveway of angels, swoops up her children and says nothing, but retreats from some darkening on the horizon, some fast approaching plague. Okay. The second to last poem is for Charlottesville. And I've been walking around town with my mom, and she's making me see Charlottesville in a new light, because she's just wowed by everything. And I'd just like to take this moment to thank you all for coming, to thank my professors from whom I have learned so much, and my cohort, whom I miss dearly, and who are some of the smartest, most brilliant people I know. Thank you. And of course, Barbara. And my Dartmouth School family, who came all the way from business school to hear poetry. Okay. Litany for Charlottesville. Heart, long fogged with thunder, let us spit fire through our teeth. Let the long winter find us sucking on charcoal, orphans barking at a moon burnt out. Let us be swept in the ear of an unquiet morning and remember the home we have built for ourselves. Remember this city's a blousy mistress, her Sunday veil some pale American whose brain coils thick with Klonopin, Camel lights, and gin. Bless the ground shook black with soot, the long strides that carry you through doubt, each night pulled up at the root, far house in your memory blown down. Bless the hurricane that comes for it, as smoke clots to stone in some coward's throat. Oh, brute vessel stuffed through with straw, the blonde rust of autumn. Eternal Father, devour these mountains with flood, until what remains of the spirit is purged, your old fictions snuffed out. I am the wild diviner on parting miracles this morning. May all your deeds burn to nothing in my mouth. But I do love Charlottesville, and I will miss it. Okay, my last poem, Home. Have I forgotten it? Wild conch shell dialect, black apostrophe curled tight on my tongue, or how the Spanish built walls of broken glass to keep me out, but the doctor bird kept chasing and raking me in. This place is your place, wreathed in red sargassum, ancient driftwood nursed on the pensive sea. That ramshackle altar I visited often, packed full with fish skull, bright with lignum vitae plumes. Father, I have asked so many miracles of it, to be patient and forgiving, to be remade for you in some small wonder. And what a joy to still believe in anything. My diction now as straight as my hair, that stranger we've long stopped searching for. But if somehow our half-sunken hearts could answer, I would cup my mouth in warm bowls over the earth and kiss the wet dirt of home, taste bogue mud and one long orange peel for skin. I'd open my ear for sugar cane and long stalks of gungo peas to climb in. I'd swim the sea still lapsing in a soldered frame, the sea that again and again calls out my name. Thank you.
And I'm introducing Brian. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to introduce Brian and his poems tonight because I feel a great deal of affinity for them as a fellow writer interested in many of the same things. What I appreciate most about Brian's poetry is that it's a poetry of risk. And I mean that only in the best way, because whenever I skim through literary magazines, I read nearly every poem and think, what's at risk here? What's at stake? What is the ambition of this poem? And when I come to a Brian poem, and I think the other MFA poets know what I mean, I don't need to ask those questions. Brian's poems are ambitious in all the ways poems ought to be ambitious. They hinge upon surprising and original imagery. They court difficulty and don't apologize for it. And they don't shy away from the abstract or ideas. They show and they tell. They are metrically attentive and tuneful in a way only a very serious reader of Shakespeare could make them. I read Brian's poems and see his beloved Greek poets like Sepphoris and Cavafy, as well as Rilke and W.S. Merwin staring back. I've often wondered where Brian gets that casual power from, how to introduce lines such as, like the human shadow, if you were to remove a single ingredient, say the soul, all would collapse. The easy answer is his hair, which Samson would surely be jealous of if he were here. The more likely answer is confidence, born of studying the masters, for whom the body, the soul, and beauty, and love were some of the only things worth writing about. And so it is with Brian. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Seaton.
Thank you, Matt. Is this a good volume? Audible? Thank you, Matt, and thank you all the poets who have read tonight. It has been a sincere pleasure to have seen you grow and to know that I'm going to be reading your poems years from now. But this marvelous pressure cooker of the MFA has been quite a pleasure. This first poem is called New Year on Pleasure Island. Pleasure Island is actually a real place in North Carolina. So if you go there, it's kind of destitute. You may see me sitting on it. New Year on Pleasure Island. What I did not know to make made itself in vestigial hours between 2 o'clock and dawn, when the shapes of birds stitch together in my mind, and a single cicada peels the air. Each letter I write returns to water. I start one now, and already the flashy ceiling of a sentence begins to fade, and I am left with nothing but the island and its circuitous thought, like the bold shards of sunsets in the reeds. Without going to the place I had to go, without any of the particular things I was told that I needed to make my life, I walk again down this desolate bank, sitting with the occasionally given happiness of a saucer with the last opaque drops fingered as the wet sand is fingered by a blue roving thumb. There is no set time for the clouds to lose their inherited gold, no moment when the wind will stop and the stenciled islands far out melt into an even line. The last of the season inserts its sun-wide button into the waiting hole. The year is closed. So this poem, I was taking requests from my wife, and this one has her in it, so she requested this one. One of many that have her. We met in the city of Asheville, which is a very liberal place, to say the least. And there were these Bradford pear trees outside this cafe that I would write at. And the city decided to cut them down in full bloom, which was bad enough. And of course it's Asheville, so women chained themselves to the trees and acted like furies and so on. My wife was not one of those women, but she did secure a slice of one of the trunks before she met me, and it was a gift she gave me on a first date. Sensing our intuitive same feelings for that, I guess. Anyways, this is a poem called Ghosts. They have come in the night and cut down all the Bradford pears. Now I walk beneath nothing, the severed half-row, and their whiteness gone. The hum of the chainsaw lingering in the eaves and the doorways like the pus of absence. The place of their bodies where I watched in spring, a stranger then, your hand, pluck a white blossom, cupping it in the palm, like your very own corner in the spotless. Now I enter it, fit my body to the wound of them not there, thinking that I owed it to myself for their sake, just this once, to be alive with what echoes, a foot, a hum, a cat, a lamp, a key, the wound that emptied you, still empty. So another poem with ghosts in it, and also, I suppose, an Asheville poem. In Asheville, there is a house called Possum Splendor. I kid you not. And in it lives about 12 people. I think they all pay about $50 each or something like that. But for a while, the house was unowned by anybody, and so they decided to pay nothing in rent and just kind of sit around for a while. And then gradually it took on a new owner. So it's called squatters. By doing nothing, they are building a room for the rain. In April, sparrows fly in. October, and they rake the leaves into a wall to give the silence something to do. Sometimes one of them will hear music coming from behind the door, but when he looks to see, it is only the cold night sky. When they sleep, noises come out, like hands unfolding from the stone, a slur of bare feet, or the clink like a thrush prodding an invisible hole. After 10 years, it is theirs, all of it. The garden and the sinks, the broken window and the small ruined wall looking out on another window. The dead lovers, Moreau and Renaud, still loitering on the stairs, hoisting the same transparent jug of wine. All of it, but the room for the rain, with the roof half eaten by the bright mineral light of the moon. So, I don't know if the poets in the crowd have experienced this, but if you find yourself at a bar or a coffee shop and somebody asks, "Oh, what do you do?" and some poets kind of lie and say, "Oh, I'm in engineering, computer programming or something." Of course, I just say, I write poetry. And usually there's two reactions, one of which, of course, is sort of apologetic. "Oh, that's one." Secretly thinking, "How do you pay the rent?" And the other, of course, is, "I don't understand modern poetry. I just don't get it." That's fun. But there was one fellow in Charlottesville who I actually had a lengthy conversation about the subject, and he was full of very strange ideas. One of which kind of stuck with me for its plausibility and its kind of strangeness. He believed that when people get to know each other and they have ideas about each other and feelings and so on, there's actually a creature invisible to the naked eye, created almost like a hovering child. In the astral plane, he said. So that kind of stuck around, as thoughts do. And I kind of wrote a response to it. Strangely. This is called The River of the Gate. That prologue was probably completely unnecessary. Let it go, that which you gave to me. Put it in the water and let it float or sink as it can, without our help, without our touching it each time the old need arises and the reaching muscle starts again. Put it in the water and see if it folds to one side or manages to pool along straight and even on top of its own reflection, with its bright string attached to the edge of something far out, without nourishment, without the miraculous human DNA threading its tiniest bone to ours. Watch and see how far it goes on the food of its own breath, like a pharaoh bundle drifting among the finger bumps of the reeds. Give it back to where you found it, beneath the foam and debris, weighing less than its shadow on the air, before you spoke it a body and the rest, heat, noise, name, times when you did not know you touched, and an invisible blood passed into the thought and grew heavy until it sprouted hair, teeth. Put it in the water now and let it go to where the river starts over, to where the parts of us gradually flake off, and it can be again someone's food, someone's joy. So last poem. One of the undeniable perks of the MFA program here is that you get to teach poetry to 15 attention deficit undergraduates, and which is fun. And in teaching that, of course, you're given free rein. You can take them fishing if you want to, or you teach them violin or whatever fancy Japanese music. However, I taught poetry, and one of the things that kept coming up is the sort of primary mysteries of poetry. What do poets write about? And of course, sex and death are pretty much the top two, and have been forever. So I decided to write a poem in the death category. And it's called Last City. Perhaps it is the matter of going out which bothers me, that you or I or someone we know will have to get up, wearing only the warmth of the memory of our clothes, and find an airy socket in the car-fumed street. They say it is possible for those who go quickly, or who are born with only one soul, to slip out with dignity from the back row at an opera and into a black cab with plush seats and tinted windows full of aquarium lights. But what about the rest? The underdressed millions, forced to rise and leave with the curtain still up and the sound of someone's voice lingering on the air. Do they file one by one into the street, leaving behind a pair of gloves or a half-touched glass of wine, waiting for no one to arrive and offer to pay the fare? But then, who's to say that you and I busy making small talk with someone or another on the last sidewalk, couldn't manage to find a road of our own and a ride. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all. This evening, this whole program is just about the words that you've heard and the words you will hear. Thank you for coming, for families, for fellow students, for students of our students, friends. Thank you to the introducers for your love and this bone-deep appreciation for the work of your peers. Thanks for your humor. Know that next year, someone only barely known to us, maybe a name and a few lines of poetry, will be back here to get you back. But thank you really to our poets. Thank you, Brianna. Where are you? Where did you go? There you are. Thank you, Brianna. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Bob. So, I don't think we know where we're going to be tomorrow night. We're assuming here, if you walk into a room and you're not sure it's right, just look for the flowers. This won't take place without the flowers. See you tomorrow night. Thank you.
You're gonna learn awesome.
Oops.